Part 1. The Lemon Pie and the Fire Alarm. September 1964. Somewhere on the Kansas-Missouri border, the jukebox in Rusty's Spoon was wheezing out the Dixie Cups Chapel of Love, struggling against the static like a dying man in an iron lung. The diner smelled of burnt coffee, floor wax, and the kind of desperation that hangs over highway stops at 3 in the afternoon. 3 people sat in a red vinyl booth near the window. They looked like they had just walked out of a magazine ad for Bad Decisions. Silas the Preacher Wayne slid a forkful of lemon meringue pie into his mouth. He chewed slowly, his eyes closed, savoring the artificial citrus like it was a religious sacrament. He wore a sharkskin suit that shimmered under the flickering fluorescent lights. His tie loosened just enough to suggest he was done with business for the day. "The problem," Silas said, pointing his fork at the half-eaten pie, "is the structural integrity of the meringue. You see this? It's weeping. A meringue shouldn't weep. Cherry. It's a sign of a weak spirit in the baker." Cherry Valance didn't look up. She was busy using a serrated steak knife to clean the dirt from under her fingernails. She wore an oversized mechanic's jacket over a polka dot dress. Her hair teased into a blonde beehive that defied gravity and aerodynamics. Maybe the baker's sad, Silas. Maybe his wife left him for a guy who sells encyclopedias. Sadness is no excuse for soggy crust, Silas countered. Next to them, Sparky was vibrating. He was a skinny kid with eyes that looked like to piss holes in the snow, darting around the room, checking the parking lot, checking the waitress, checking his own reflection in the napkin dispenser. He was tapping a spoon against the table. Clink, 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 clink. "Can we go?" Sparky hissed, his voice cracking. "We've been here 40 minutes. The pie's 8. The coffee is cold. Let's blow this pop stand." Silas stopped chewing. He turned his head slowly, like a tank turret, to face Sparky. "Sparky, my son, we are digesting. Digestion is a crucial part of the capitalist cycle. We consume, we process, we expel. If we leave now, we disrupt the rhythm. And you know how I feel about rhythm. But the fuzz," Sparky whispered, sweat beading on his upper lip. "The fire chief's suit is literally in the trunk, man. It smells like smoke. It smells like victory," Silas corrected. He took a sip of black coffee. "And a little bit of sulfur. Cherry, did you use the military-grade canisters?" Cherry admired her clean nail. "Standard issue M18s. Purple smoke. Very festive." Silas smiled, a predatory grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Purple. Regal. I like that. Title card. 2 hours earlier, First National Bank of Wichita. 1:15 p.m. Chaos is a ladder, but panic is a water slide." The lobby of the First National Bank was filled with a thick, choking purple haze. It billowed from the ventilation shafts like the breath of a dragon. The alarm wasn't just ringing, it was screaming. A high-pitched mechanical shriek that shattered rational thought. Through the front doors burst 4 figures clad in heavy, rubberized turnout coats and firefighter helmets. Leading them was Silas, holding a massive fire axe. "Everybody down. Get low. The roof is gonna blow," Silas roared, his voice projecting with the authority of God himself. The bank customers, already coughing and blinded by the purple smoke, dropped to the floor instantly. A fat man in a pinstripe suit was trying to crawl under a desk. "Move it, folks. Single file. Don't breathe the fumes," Silas barked, pointing the axe toward the exit. Behind him, Cherry and Booker, a giant of a man who moved with the silent efficiency of a tank, dragged a heavy fire hose into the lobby. But the hose wasn't connected to a hydrant. It was cut short, and the nozzle was taped shut. Sparky brought up the rear, struggling with a massive canvas-wheeled cart labeled emergency salvage. The bank manager, a sweating little man named Mr. Henderson, stumbled out of his office, handkerchief over his mouth. "Officer! Officer! The vault! The bonds!" Silas grabbed Mr. Henderson by the lapels of his expensive jacket. "Forget the bonds, you moron. The ventilation system is pumping carbon monoxide straight from the boiler. We have 3 minutes before this building becomes a tomb. But the cash reserves. Delivery was this morning. Henderson wheezed, eyes wide with terror. Silas paused, looking at the manager with sudden, intense gravity. Cash reserves? Is the vault open? Yes. I was just, Booker. Silas shouted over the alarm. We need to secure the assets to prevent fire damage. It's standard protocol 40-9. Get the asbestos blankets. Booker nodded. He didn't speak. He never spoke much. He just shoved the emergency salvage carts toward the open vault door. Inside the vault, the air was clear. Booker and Cherry went to work. They didn't shovel the money, they swept it. Stacks of unmarked bills flew into the canvas cart. It was industrial, rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. Outside in the lobby, Silas was orchestrating the evacuation. He helped an old lady up. Easy now, ma'am. Keep your head down. That's it. A security guard, a young kid with acne and a badge that looked too big for his chest, squinted through the purple smoke. He looked at Silas' helmet. It said Wichita F.D., but the paint was chipping, revealing a different city name underneath. Maybe Tulsa. The guard stepped forward, hand on his holster. Hey, wait a minute. Why is the smoke purple? The music of the scene cut out. The alarm seemed to fade into the background. Silas looked at the kid. He looked at the gun. He sighed, the disappointment palpable. It's a chemical reaction with the insulation, son, Silas said softly. I don't think so, the kid stammered, drawing his revolver. Bam. It wasn't a gunshot. It was Booker. He had emerged from the vault, swinging a heavy canvas sack filled with quarters. It connected with the side of the guard's head, with a sound like a wet towel hitting a tile floor. The kid folded like a lawn chair. Silas looked down at the unconscious guard, then at the horrified customers. The ceiling is collapsing, Silas screamed, reigniting the panic. Run! Run for your lives. They ran. They trampled over each other to get out the door. 2 minutes later, the firefighters rolled the heavy cart out the front door, right past the gathering crowd on the sidewalk. Silas tipped his helmet to Mr. Henderson, who was coughing on the curb. We'll keep these safe at the station until the fire marshal clears the building, sir. Silas shouted. Thank you. Oh, thank you, brave men, Henderson cried. They threw the cart into the back of a stolen 1958 Ford F600 fire engine, jumped onto the running boards, and hit the siren. As they peeled away, turning the corner onto Main Street, Cherry ripped off her helmet, her blonde hair exploding out, and lit a cigarette. Purple smoke. She laughed, exhaling a cloud that mixed with the wind. God, people are stupid. Back to present Rusty's Spoon Diner. Silas finished his coffee. He placed a $5 bill on the table. The beauty of the fire drill, Silas said, standing up and buttoning his jacket, is that people are conditioned to obey the uniform. Put a man in a vest, here's a worker. Put him in a helmet, here's a savior. They literally thanked us for robbing them. Sparky grabbed the car keys, his hands shaking so hard they jingled like Christmas bells. Can we go now? Please. Relax, Sparky. Silas patted the kid's cheek. It was a slap, really. Just soft enough to be affectionate, hard enough to sting. We have a schedule. Next stop is Omaha. I hear the architecture there is brutalist. They walked out of the diner into the blinding afternoon sun. Parked out back, hidden behind a dumpster, was a powder blue Cadillac Coupe de Ville. The fire engine was long gone, sunk in a quarry 10 miles back. As they got in, the waitress ran out of the diner waving the bill. Hey, mister. You forgot the tax. Silas rolled down the window. He looked at the waitress, looked at the $5 he left, which was double the bill. He smiled. Keep it, darling. Buy yourself a better pie baker. He gunned the engine. The caddy roared, tires spitting gravel, and they shot onto the highway, a streak of blue steel against the flat, endless yellow cornfields. In the trunk, $300,000 in non-sequential bills sat quietly next to a tire iron and a box of half-eaten donuts. The radio crackled. A news bulletin cut through the music. Reports of a daring bank heist in Wichita. Witnesses describe a team of firefighters. Silas turned the volume up. He lit a cigarette of French galloises and inhaled deeply. Music, he said. End of part 1. Part 2. Casting Inside Hell. December 1963. Detroit, Michigan. The snow in Detroit wasn't white. It was gray, mixing with the soot from the factories until it looked like the sky was shedding dead skin. The Rusty Bucket was the kind of bar where you wiped your feet on the way out. It smelled of sawdust, urine, and hopelessness. In the back corner, a man sat alone. He was huge, a mountain of muscle wrapped in a surplus army jacket. This was Booker. He was hunched over a tiny, delicate mechanism on the table. A pocket watch. His fingers, thick as sausages, moved with the precision of a surgeon, adjusting a gear no larger than a grain of rice. Silas Wayne sat 2 tables away, nursing a warm beer. He watched Booker. He had been watching him for 20 minutes. 3 local toughs, steel workers with too much whiskey in their blood and not enough sense in their heads, drifted toward Booker's table. "Hey, Lurch," the leader sneered, slamming a hand on the table. The tiny gear bounced and fell into a crack in the floorboards. Booker stopped. He didn't look up. He just stared at the empty space where the gear used to be. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a tornado touched down. "I think he's deaf, boys," the leader laughed, reaching for Booker's beer. Booker stood up. The chair didn't slide back, it disintegrated as he rose. He didn't punch the leader. He grabbed the man's face, palmed it like a basketball, and slammed the back of his head into the jukebox. Crack. The glass shattered. The record skipped. The ronettes started stuttering. "Be my baby. Be my baby. Be my." The other 2 rushed him. Booker caught the first one's fist, twisted the arm until the bones snapped with a sound like a dry branch stepping on a landmine, and kicked the 3rd man through the plywood door of the men's room. It took 6 seconds. Booker sat back down. He looked at the floor, searching for his gear. Silas stood up, picked up his drink, and walked over. He knelt down, picked up the tiny brass gear from the dirty floor, and placed it gently on the table in front of the giant. "You have a gift for deconstruction, my friend," Silas said, his voice smooth as silk over sandpaper. "But your timing needs work." Booker looked up. His eyes were dead. The 1,000-yard stare of a man who had seen Incheon and never really came back. "Do I know you?" His voice was a deep rumble, like gravel in a cement mixer. "I'm Silas. I'm building a church. I need a choir director. I don't sing." "I don't need you to sing," Silas smiled, sliding a business card across the table. It was blank, except for a time and an address written in fountain pen. "I need you to carry the hymnals. They're very heavy, and sometimes they explode." Booker looked at the card, then at the unconscious men groaning on the floor, then back at his watch. "Does it pay better than fixing watches?" "It pays in freedom, Booker. And yes, lots of cash." 2 days later, suburbia, Evanston, Illinois. The lawns were manicured. The fences were white. The air smelled of dryer sheets and repression. It was the American dream, packaged and sold for $15,000 down. A powder blue 1963 Chevy Impala sat in the driveway of a particularly pristine house. A man in a bathrobe stood on the porch, screaming, "Charlene, you crazy bitch, get back here." Charlene Cherry Valance was walking down the sidewalk. She wore cat-eye sunglasses, a red trench coat, and high heels that clicked rhythmically on the pavement. She was carrying a bowling bag. Silas leaned against his car parked across the street, smoking. Booker sat in the passenger seat, filling the entire window frame. "That her?" Booker asked. "That's her." Silas nodded. "Chemistry degree from Berkeley. Dishonorable discharge from the Army Corps of Engineers. She has a problem with authority." "Charlene!" The man on the porch screamed again. "I'm calling the cops." Cherry stopped. She turned around, lowered her sunglasses, and blew a kiss at the man. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a bulky remote detonator and modified garage door opener with wire sticking out, and pressed the button. Boom. The Chevy Impala didn't just explode, it bloomed. A fireball of orange and black oily smoke erupted from the chassis. The hood spun into the air like a frisbee, landing perfectly on the pristine roof of the house. The shockwave rattled the windows of the entire block. The man on the porch was knocked flat on his ass, covered in soot but unharmed. Cherry turned back around and kept walking. She didn't flinch. She didn't look back at the explosion. She walked straight up to Silas' car. She opened the back door and threw her bowling bag in. It clanked heavy, metallic. "You're late," she said to Silas. "We were enjoying the show." Silas grinned. "Nice composition. Little heavy on the accelerant, maybe." It was his prized possession, Cherry said, sliding into the back seat and lighting a cigarette. Her hands were perfectly steady. "He loved that car more than he loved me. Now they're both history. Drive." Silas looked at Booker. Booker looked at the burning wreckage. "She's hired," Booker grunted. The safe house. An abandoned slaughterhouse outside Chicago. The air inside was cold. Hooks hung from the ceiling chains, swaying slightly in the draft. Silas stood before them. Booker sat on a crate, sharpening a knife. Cherry was dismantling a radio. And there was a fourth man now, Sparky. He was twitchy, thin, wearing a leather jacket that was too big for him. He was juggling a set of car keys, his eyes darting around the shadows. "Why are we here?" Sparky asked, his voice high and nervous. "I thought this was a job interview. This looks like where they make hot dogs." "We are here," Silas began, pacing the concrete floor, his voice echoing, "because the world outside is a lie. Look at them. They work 9 to 5. They buy their washing machines. They watch their televisions. And they think they are free. But they are cattle." He pointed to the empty meat hooks. "We are not cattle. We are the butchers." Silas walked over to a chalkboard he had set up. On it, he had taped a map of the Midwest. Red pins marked 5 locations. "I don't want common thugs," Silas said, looking at each of them. "I don't want bank robbers. Any idiot with a pistol can rob a liquor store. I want artists." "Artists," Cherry scoffed, smoke curling from her lips. "Performance art," Silas corrected. "We're going to hit the first national bank chain. 5 banks. 5 different methods. No guns unless absolutely necessary. We use confusion. We use psychology. We use the system against itself." "And the money?" Sparky asked, licking his lips. "The money is the applause, Sparky. The money is just the way the universe tells you did a good job." Silas slammed his hand on the table. "I need a driver who can feel the engine's heartbeat." He pointed at Sparky. "I need a man who can walk through a wall if he has to." He pointed at Booker. "I need a woman who can turn a vault door into a pile of scrap metal with a smile." He pointed at Cherry. "And you?" Booker asked. "What do you do?" Silas adjusted his tie. The light caught the gold in his cufflinks. "Me. I write the script. I direct the show. And I make sure we all get to the curtain call alive." He pulled a bottle of expensive whiskey from a paper bag and 4 dirty glasses. He poured. To the Velvet Gang, Silas proposed a toast. The name hung in the air. "Sounds like a stripper group," Cherry deadpanned. "Exactly," Silas winked. "Seductive, dangerous, and expensive." They drank. The whiskey burned. Outside, the wind howled through the rusted corrugated iron of the slaughterhouse, sounding like a police siren in the distance. End of Part 2. Part 3. Overalls and Bad Concrete, February 1964. Davenport, Iowa. The Second National Bank smelled of old money and fresh drywall dust. In the middle of the lobby, a section of the pristine marble floor had been cordoned off with yellow tape and wooden sawhorses. A sign read, "Danger. Municipal sewer maintenance. Sorry for the inconvenience." Inside the cordoned area, the noise was deafening. BRR, RR dash tat dash tat dash tat dash tat. Booker was operating a pneumatic jackhammer. He wore blue denim overalls covered in grey dust, and a yellow hard hat that looked like a toy. On his massive head, he wasn't just breaking the floor, he was punishing it. Silas stood nearby, holding a clipboard and looking important. He wore a high-vis vest and chewed on an unlit cigar. He was screaming over the noise to the bank manager, "Mr. Pendergast, I'm telling you, it's a structural fracture in the main sewage line." Silas roared, "If we don't patch it, your vault is gonna smell like the entire population of Iowa took a dump in it." Pendergast, a man who looked like he ironed his socks, winced at the vulgarity. "But the noise. Customers are complaining. Can't you do this after hours?" Silas tapped his clipboard aggressively. "Union rules, pal. Local 402. You want me to stop? Fine. I'll pack up. But when the fecal matter hits the oscillating ventilator, don't call me." Pendergast waved his hands in surrender. "Just finish it quickly." Inside the hole, hidden from view by the piled-up rubble, Cherry was on her knees. She wasn't fixing a pipe. She was using a thermal lance to cut through the steel floor of the vault from underneath. The jackhammer noise masked the hiss of the burning metal. "How we looking, Cherry?" Silas muttered into a walkie-talkie disguised as a brick. 2 inches of steel left. Cherry's voice crackled back. "This concrete is crap, but the steel is stubborn. Need 5 minutes. You have 3, Silas said. He looked toward the front entrance. Standing by the door was Sparky. He was dressed as the safety inspector, holding a stop-go sign. But Sparky wasn't looking at the door. He was looking at his own hands. He was sweating profusely. In February, Sparky had decided that a little pick-me-up would help his nerves. He had swallowed 3 Black Beauty's heavy amphetamines about an hour ago. Now, his heart was beating like a trapped bird, and the pores on his face felt like they were opening and closing to the beat of a song. Only he could hear. A police officer walked in. Officer Miller. Just a beat cop coming in to cash a check. Sparky's eyes widened. To him, the cop didn't look like a cop. He looked like a giant blue monster with a shiny badge that was shooting laser beams. "Hey," Miller nodded at Sparky as he walked past. "Working hard." Sparky didn't nod. He twitched. The vibration. It's in the walls, man." Miller stopped. He frowned. "Excuse me. The walls." Sparky's voice pitched up. "They're humming. Can't you hear it? It's the CIA. They're in the pipes." Silas saw this from across the room. His stomach dropped. "Oh, for Christ's sake." Officer Miller took a step closer to Sparky. "Son, are you all right? Your pupils are the size of dinner plates." Sparky panicked. He reached into his safety inspector jacket. He was supposed to have a whistle. Instead, he pulled out a snub-nose .38 revolver. The lobby went silent. Even the jackhammer seemed to pause, though Booker was still going at it. "Back off," Sparky shrieked, waving the gun. "I'm not going back to the box." "Gun," Miller shouted, reaching for his holster. "Booker," Silas yelled, dropping the clipboard. Booker stopped the jackhammer. He looked up from the hole, saw the situation, and didn't hesitate. He grabbed a shovel from the pile of debris. As Officer Miller drew his weapon, Booker launched the shovel across the lobby like a javelin. It wasn't elegant. It was brutal physics. The flat of the shovel blade hit Officer Miller square in the chest with a metallic clang. The cop flew backward, sliding 10 feet across the marble floor, gasping for air. His ribs lightly cracked. "Cherry, blow it now," Silas screamed. "It's not cut through." "I don't care. Use the plastic." In the hole, Cherry slapped a brick of C4 onto the weakened steel, set a 10-second fuse, and scrambled out of the pit. Fire in the hole. The explosion was muffled. A deep whomp that lifted the floor tiles and sent a cloud of dust and concrete shrapnel into the air. The lobby filled with grey fog. Customers were screaming, diving under tables. "Go! Go! Go!" Booker reached into the smoking hole. The explosion had breached the vault, but the hole was jagged and small. He ripped a canvas bag of cash through the jagged metal, tearing the fabric. Bills fluttered into the dust. He grabbed 2 metal boxes, safe deposit boxes, and hauled himself up. "Leave the rest. We're burning." Silas grabbed Sparky by the collar of his jacket and dragged him toward the door. Sparky was hyperventilating, laughing hysterically. They burst out onto the street. The getaway car, a nondescript work van, was parked illegally. "Drive." Silas shoved Sparky into the passenger seat. "You're not driving in that condition, you junkie idiot." Silas jumped into the driver's seat. Booker and Cherry dove into the back with the tools and the 2 metal boxes. Silas floored it. The van screeched away just as the bank's alarm finally decided to start ringing. Later, a dirt road under a bridge, 5 miles out of town. The van sat idling. The back doors were open. Silas was pacing back and forth, holding a tire iron. He looked like he was about to use it on Sparky. Sparky was sitting on the ground, hugging his knees, coming down hard from the high. I saw the lizard people." "Silas," Sparky whimpered. "The cop. He had scales. He had a badge, you moron," Silas shouted, kicking a hubcap into the river. "We practiced this. We were invisible. We were the working class. Nobody looks at the working class. But you decided to turn it into a one-man production of Hamlet on speed." Booker was sitting on the bumper, trying to pry open one of the metal boxes with a screwdriver. His hands were covered in white dust and dried blood from a scrape on his knuckles. "What's the take?" Cherry asked, wiping soot from her face. She looked tired. Booker popped the lid of the first box. He looked inside. He sighed. He turned the box over. Family photos, a birth certificate, and a collection of antique stamps. "Stamps," Booker rumbled. "We nearly killed a cop for stamps." "Open the other one," Silas said, rubbing his temples. Booker pried open the second box. "Costume jewelry. Paste. Maybe worth $50 at a pawn shop. And a stack of love letters from 1942. Silence fell over the group. The only sound was the rushing water of the river and the distant sound of traffic. Silas dropped a tire iron. He leaned against the van and laughed. It was a dry, humorless laugh. "Bad concrete," Silas muttered. "Bad concrete, bad timing, and bad drugs." He looked at Sparky, who was shivering. Silas' face hardened. The charisma was gone. In its place was something cold and reptilian. "This is strike one, Sparky. In baseball, you get 3. In my world, you get 2. If you ever show up to work high again, I won't fire you. I'll bury you." Sparky nodded frantically. "I swear, Silas. Never again. Just the coffee from now on." "Get in the van," Silas ordered. "We need to find a new town. This one's burned." As they loaded up, Booker looked at the pile of stolen stamps on the ground. He picked up one, a blue 5-cent stamp with a picture of George Washington. He stuck it onto the back of his hand, looked at it for a moment, then climbed into the van. The van drove off, leaving a cloud of exhaust and a scattered collection of someone's precious memories in the mud. End of Part 3. Part 4. The Hound picks up the scent. March 1964. The morgue, Davenport, Iowa. The room was tiled in white, but the grout was yellowed by years of formaldehyde and nicotine. It was cold enough to see your breath. But FBI Special Agent Cordell, the Hound Vance, didn't seem to notice the temperature. He stood over a metal table. On it lay Officer Miller, the cop Booker had hit with the shovel. Miller wasn't dead, just in a coma, but Vance preferred the morgue for his thinking. It was quiet. The clientele didn't lie. Vance was a man who looked like he had been sketched with a charcoal pencil and then sharpened. His suit was black, his tie was black, and his shirt was white enough to surrender to. His hair was slicked back with enough pomade to waterproof a duck. Agent Vance. Sheriff Grady stood in the doorway, holding a paper bag. He looked nervous. Small-town lawmen always got nervous around Vance. They smelled the predator on him. "You found the van," Vance said. He didn't turn round. He was inspecting Miller's bruised chest, tracing the outline of the shovel impact with a gloved finger. Yes, sir. Ditched in a creek about 10 miles east. We dredged it up this morning. And clean, sir. Wiped down. No prints. No hair. Just mud and river water. Vance finally turned. His eyes were a pale, watery blue, the color of a husky's eyes right before it snaps your neck. He took a pristine white handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed the corner of his mouth. Nothing is ever clean, Sheriff. Chaos leaves a residue. Entropy is a law of physics, and criminals are agents of entropy. Show me the trash. Sheriff Grady dumped the contents of the paper bag onto a side table. Muddy floor mats, a rusty screwdriver, a candy wrapper, and a small, orange plastic cylinder. Vance picked up the cylinder with a pair of tweezers. It was a prescription pill bottle. The label was soaked and peeling, the ink mostly dissolved by the river water. Amphetamines, Vance murmured. Desoxin. The breakfast of champions and truck drivers. He held the bottle up to the flickering fluorescent light. The patient's name was gone. The doctor's name was a smear. But the pharmacy address. The bottom line of the label had survived, protected by the plastic rim at the base, Horatio Avenue. Detroit. Detroit, Vance whispered. The word tasted like iron. Motor City. It's a big city. Agent, Grady shrugged. Lots of junkies in Detroit. True, Vance said, dropping the bottle into an evidence bag. But this junkie isn't working alone. He's working with a demolition expert who knows how to cut a thermal line, and a giant who can swing a shovel with enough force to crack a stone through a Kevlar vest. If they had invented them yet. Vance stripped off his gloves. This isn't a robbery crew, Sheriff. It's a circus. And I hate clowns. 2 days later. Detroit, Michigan. The pharmacy on Horatio Avenue was a hole in the wall sandwiched between a pawn shop and a burnt-out cinema. Vance walked in. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to the gloom inside. The pharmacist, a balding man with nervous hands named Sol, looked up. We're closed, Sol said. Vance locked the door behind him and flipped the sign to sorry. We missed you. You'll open for me, Sol, Vance said, walking to the counter. He placed his badge on the glass. He didn't slam it. He placed it gently, like a coaster. FBA. Sol swallowed hard. I ain't done nothing. I keep good books. Vance placed the muddy pill bottle on the counter. This is your bottle, Sol. The batch number is still visible on the cap. Who did you sell this to? Sol squinted. I sell a lot of pills, mister. People get sad. They get tired. I help them. Vance smiled. It was a terrifying expression. It involved teeth but no warmth. He walked around the counter. Sol backed up until he hit the shelves of cough syrup. I'm not the vice squad, Sol. I don't care about your little narcotic candy shop. I am hunting a wolf pack. One of the wolves has a taste for speed. Skinny kid. Probably twitches. Looks like he's vibrating. I don't know names, Sol stammered. Vance reached out and grabbed Sol's hand. He placed it flat on the counter. The human hand has 27 bones, Vance said conversationally. It's a marvel of engineering. He pulled a heavy, weighted sapper leather blackjack from his pocket. If you don't give me a name or a location in 5 seconds, I'm going to reduce that number to 0. Wait. Sol shrieked. The kid. He comes in with a girl. Blonde. Crazy hair. She buys acetone. Gallons of it. Acetone and amphetamines, Vance mused. Making bombs and staying awake to watch them go off. Where can I find them? I don't know where they live. I swear. But the kid. He mentioned a bar. He owes money to a guy at the Rusty Bucket. He said he'd pay him back after the big job. Vance released Sol's hand. He smoothed his suit jacket. See, that wasn't so hard. Collaboration is the cornerstone of democracy. Vance turned to leave. At the door, he paused. If you tell anyone I was here, Sol, I'll come back. And next time, I won't bring the sap. I'll bring a bone saw. That night, the Rusty Bucket. The bar was exactly as Silas and Booker had left it months ago. loud, smoky, and violent. Vance sat at the bar. He ordered a glass of milk. The bartender, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, stared at him. "We got beer. We got whiskey. We got gin that'll make you blind. We ain't got milk." "Then bring me a glass of water." "In a clean glass," Vance said. He scanned the room. He wasn't looking for the gang. He knew they were gone. He was looking for the smell of them, the impression they left behind. He saw the jukebox. The glass was new, but the frame was dented. "Rough crowd?" Vance asked the bartender. "Had a giant in here a while back." The bartender grunted, wiping a dirty rag across the bar. "Smashed a guy's head into the machine. Crazy bastard. Didn't say a word. Just crunch." "A giant," Vance nodded. "And let me guess. He was with a man in a suit. A man who talks like he's reading from a Bible." The bartender stopped wiping. He looked at Vance suspiciously. "Who are you?" "A cop." "I'm a tax collector," Vance lied smoothly. "They owe Uncle Sam." "Yeah. Well, the suit guy. He was weird. The preacher, the locals called him. Used to sit in the corner and write in a notebook. Left this behind once." The bartender reached under the cash register and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a napkin. Vance took it. On the napkin, written in elegant, flowing fountain pen ink, was a quote. "Ideally, we should rob the bank and then burn it down, for the money is the sickness, and the fire is the cure." Below the quote was a doodle, a rough sketch of a bank vault door, and a list. 1. Fire Wichita, 2. Earth, Davenport, 3. Air. Vance stared at the list. "Elements," Vance whispered. "He's going through the classical elements." He looked at the third item. Air. Wichita was smoke. Davenport was underground earth. Vance stood up. He left a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change. Buy some milk." He walked out of the bar into the cold Detroit night. He walked to a payphone on the corner and dialed a number in Washington, D.C. "Director. It's Vance. I need a list of every bank in the Midwest that has a roof-accessible vault or a pneumatic tube system." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end. "No, sir. They aren't just thieves. They're performance artists. And I think I know where their next stage is." Vance looked up at the sky. A radio tower blinked in the distance, its red light pulsing against the clouds. "Air," Vance said to himself. "Radio waves. Frequencies." He lit a cigarette, the flame illuminating his cold, pale eyes. "Run, rabbit, run," he whispered. "The hound is off the leash." End of Part 4. Part 5. Radio Waves and Ghosts, June 1964. Indianapolis, Indiana. The Chevy van was parked on the top level of a parking garage overlooking the city. It was a humid day, the kind where the air feels like a wet wool blanket. Inside the van, it was a sauna of electronics and cigarette smoke. The back was filled with equipment that shouldn't exist in the civilian world. Large, olive-drab boxes with dials and heavy switches. A forest of antennas was taped to the roof of the van. Sparky was hunched over a console, wearing headphones. He looked better cleaner, though his eyes still had that frantic energy. He was tweaking a frequency knob with the touch of a safecracker. "Signal is clean," Sparky whispered. "I've tapped the repeater. We are now God." Booker sat next to him. He held a heavy microphone in his hand. He had a script taped to the wall of the van. "Remember the cadence, Booker." Silas' voice came over the walkie-talkie. Silas was 5 blocks away, sitting on a park bench across from the Third Merchants Bank, feeding pigeons. "You're not a tank commander anymore. You're a board desk sergeant named Miller, who wants to go home and eat his meatloaf." Booker cleared his throat. He pressed the transmit button. All units, stand by 410 to 33. Emergency traffic only." Booker's voice was perfect. It had the tinny, authoritative rasp of authority. It bounced off the repeater tower and flooded every police cruiser in a 10-mile radius. "Dispatch, this is 4 Alpha. I have shots fired at the rail yard. Sector 7. Looks like a gang dispute. Heavy caliber. Booker released the button. He waited 3 seconds. Then he deepened his voice slightly, changing the pitch to mimic a patrol officer. 4 Alpha, this is to Baker. In 10-8. Enrolling. Sparky giggled. You're talking to yourself, big man. Schizophrenia has never been so profitable. Negative. 2 Baker. Booker switched back to the dispatch voice. We have multiple 911 calls. Automatic weapons reported. All available units. Respond code 3 to the rail yard. Repeat, code 3. Officer needs assistance. From his park bench, Silas watched. It was a ballet. First, one siren wailed in the distance. Then another. Then a chorus. A police cruiser parked right in front of the bank peeled out, tires screeching, lights flashing, racing away from the bank toward the rail yard, which was on the exact opposite side of the city. Another cruiser followed. Then a paddy wagon. The streets around the bank emptied of law enforcement like water down a drain. Silas stood up. He brushed a crumb from his lap. The stage is clear, he whispered into his lapel. Curtain up. Inside the Third Merchants Bank, it was quiet. The air conditioning hummed. The tellers were bored. Silas and Sherry walked in. They looked like $1,000,000. Silas in a cream-colored linen suit, Cherry in a conservative navy dress and pearls, holding a briefcase. They didn't run. They didn't scream. They walked straight to the manager's office. Mr. Abernathy, the manager, looked up from his paperwork. Can I help you? Silas closed the door gently behind him. He locked it. Mr. Abernathy. Silas smiled, sitting down uninvited. My name is Mr. Black, and this is Mrs. White. We are here to make a withdrawal. I don't believe you have an account with us. Abernathy frowned. We don't, Cherry said, placing the briefcase on the desk. She opened it. Inside was not paperwork, but a neatly packed bundle of dynamite sticks wired to a timer. Abernathy's face went pale. He reached for the silent alarm button under his desk. Go ahead, Silas said, lighting a cigarette. Press it. Abernathy froze. I will. I insist, Silas gestured. Call the police. But I should warn you. They're a little busy right now. Silas reached over and turned on the radio, sitting on Abernathy's credenza. He tuned it to the police band. Shots fired. Impin down. Need backup at the south gate. Where is everybody? Booker's voice, acting his heart out. Dispatch to all units. Establish a perimeter at the rail yard. SWAT is en route. Silas turned the radio off. You see, Mr. Abernathy, there are ghosts at the rail yard. Very violent ghosts. Every cop in Indianapolis is chasing them. By the time they realize there's nobody there, we will be 2 counties away. Abernathy looked at the dynamite. He looked at Silas. He looked at the window, where the street was eerily empty of police. The vault, Abernathy whispered. The vault, Silas agreed. And please, no dye packs, Mrs. White hates doing laundry. 20 minutes later, Silas and Cherry walked out of the bank. Silas carried the briefcase. Cherry carried 2 heavy shopping bags from a high-end department store filled with cash. They got into the powder blue Cadillac parked calmly in the loading zone. How was it? Sparky's voice crackled over the walkie-talkie. Civilized, Silas replied, starting the car. Booker, kill the transmission. Back in the parking garage. Booker signed off. Dispatch to all units. Situation at rail yard appears to be false alarm. Suspects have vanished. Resume patrol. Booker put down the microphone. He looked at his hands. They weren't shaking. I should have been an actor, Booker rumbled. You're a star, baby. Sparky laughed, ripping the wires out of the dashboard. A goddamn star. That night, the Starlight Motel. The room was bathed in the neon glow of the sky outside, pink and blue. The bed was covered in money. $250,000. The biggest score yet. They were celebrating. Pizza boxes were stacked on the TV. Whiskey flowed. Even Booker was smiling, a rare, terrifying sight. Sparky was dancing around the room to surfing U.S.A. playing on a portable radio. "We are invincible," Sparky yelled, throwing a handful of bills into the air. "We are the Phantom Menace, the Radio Bandits." Silas sat in the corner, counting his share. He wasn't smiling. It was too easy, Silas murmured. Cherry looked at him over the rim of her glass. "You're complaining. Nobody got hurt. No explosions. No heat." "That's the problem," Silas said. "When it's this quiet, you can't hear the footsteps behind you." He looked at the map on the wall. 3 pins were in. To go. "The next one needs to be different," Silas said. "The air element is done. Next is information. History." "The archive job?" Booker asked, opening a beer with his teeth. "Yes. We go through the wall. But we need to be careful. Success makes you sloppy. Look at Sparky." They all looked at Sparky. He was currently wearing a lampshade as a hat and trying to moonwalk on the carpet. "He's happy, Silas," Cherry defended him. "Let the kid have a moment." "Happiness is a distraction," Silas snapped. He stood up and walked to the window. He peered through the blinds. A car drove slowly past the motel, a black sedan. It didn't stop. It just cruised by. Silas tensed. "Did you see that?" "See what?" Cherry asked. "Black sedan. Government plates." "You're paranoid," Cherry sighed. "It's a motel off the interstate. People drive by." Silas turned back to the room. The joy was gone from his face. "Pack it up," Silas ordered. "What?" "We just ordered more pizza," Sparky whined. "I said pack it up." Silas roared, kicking a chair over. "We move tonight. We don't sleep in the same place twice. Not anymore." The music stopped. The room went silent. Booker stood up slowly. He looked at Silas, then at the money. "You're the boss," Booker said, his voice void of emotion. He started shoveling cash into duffel bags. Silas watched them. He knew he was right. He could feel it in his gut. The Hound was out there, and he was getting closer. Silas looked at the radio, sitting on the nightstand. It was playing a commercial for laundry detergent. "Gets out even the toughest stains." "You can't wash this out," Silas whispered to himself. "This stain is permanent." End of Part 5. Part 6. The Archivist and the Rat, August 1964, St. Louis, Missouri. The basement of the street. Louis Municipal Archive smelled like dead words and rat poison. It was a labyrinth of metal shelves, stacked floor to ceiling with cardboard boxes containing the city's forgotten history. Parking violations from 1952, zoning permits for buildings that no longer existed, and water sanitation reports. In the deepest corner of the basement, hidden behind a wall of boxes labeled Sanitation Department, 1948 to 1955, the Velvet Gang was sweating. It was 3 a.m. on a Sunday. The air was stagnant. Booker was shirtless, his massive back glistening with sweat and concrete dust. He was operating a core drill, a beast of a machine bolted into the concrete wall. This wall was shared with the Mercantile Trust Bank next door, specifically, the rear wall of their main vault. The drill bit chewed into the concrete with a sound like a dentist drilling a giant's molar. Silas sat on a stack of files, reading a zoning permit. "Did you know," Silas said, raising his voice over the drill, "that the bank we are currently breaking into was built on the site of a bordello? In 1890, this was Madame Lafleur's house of gentle recreation." Cherry was wiping down the drill bit with cooling oil. She looked bored. "And now it's a bank. Same business model, different hours. People come in, get screwed, and leave broke. Poetry, Cherry." Silas chuckled. "Pure poetry." Sparky wasn't listening. He was pacing near the basement stairs, chewing his fingernails until they bled. "How much longer, Booker?" Sparky snapped. "We've been here 6 hours. The guard shift changes at 6. Booker didn't answer. He just leaned harder into the drill. Crunch. The tone of the drill changed. It pitched up. "Hit the rebar," Booker grunted. He stopped the machine. "Need the cutters." "I'll get them," Sparky volunteered too quickly. "They're in the van." "Sit down," Silas ordered. His voice was sharp. "Cherry, go get the cutters." Sparky froze. "Why can't I go? I need fresh air. It smells like mold in here." Silas stood up. He walked over to Sparky and invaded his personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and gun oil. "Because, Sparky, you are twitching like a frog on a hot plate. And when you twitch, you make mistakes. Sit. Read a file about sewage. Educate yourself." Sparky slumped onto a box, sulking. Cherry grabbed the keys and ran up the stairs. The alleyway. Cherry stepped out into the humid night air. The van was parked right at the loading dock. She opened the back doors and rummaged for the bolt cutters. She paused. She looked left, then right. The alley was empty. She reached under the driver's seat and pulled out a small notepad. She checked a number. Then she walked to the payphone mounted on the brick wall of the archive building. She dropped a dime in. She dialed. It rang once, twice. "It's me," she whispered. Her voice was steady, cold. "We're through the first layer. 2 hours, maybe 3. She listened to the voice on the other end. "No," she said. "He suspects the kid. The kid is a wreck. It's perfect cover." She hung up. She wiped the handset with her sleeve. She grabbed the bolt cutters and walked back inside, her face a mask of bored indifference. The breach. 5:15 a.m. The hole was small, just big enough for a person to crawl through. The concrete was 2 feet thick, reinforced with steel bars that were now snipped and bent backward like rib bones. During open-heart surgery, inside the hole, the grey metal of the vault's inner lining was visible. "Cherry." Silas nodded. Cherry applied a frame charger rectangle of plastic explosive shaped to cut a perfect door. Fire in the hole. They took cover behind the stacks of zoning permits. Crack. It wasn't a boom. It was a sharp, snapping sound, like a whip breaking the sound barrier. The steel plate fell inward with a heavy clang. They were in. They crawled through the dust, one by one, into the holy of holies. The vault of the Mercantile Trust. It was silent. Rows of safety deposit boxes lined the walls. Pallets of cash were stacked in the center, wrapped in plastic. "Jackpot," Sparky breathed, his eyes wide. He ran toward the pallets. "Wait." Silas barked. He walked up to the nearest pallet. He took out a knife and sliced the plastic. He pulled out a bundle of $20 bills. He looked at them. He frowned. He pulled out another bundle. And another. "What is it?" Booker asked, holding a canvas sack open. Silas held up a bill. It had a hole punched through the center. A perfect, circular hole right through Andrew Jackson's face. "Mutilated currency," Silas whispered. The anger in his voice was rising like bile. "This is the burn pile. These bills are scheduled for destruction at the Federal Reserve. They're punched. They're non-negotiable." "What?" Sparky screamed. "You mean it's play money?" "It means," Silas threw the bundle across the room, "that if we try to spend this, every cashier from here to Timbuktu will know it's stolen. It's worthless." "Not all of it," Cherry said. She was at the back of the vault, checking the smaller cages. "These sacks, unmarked tens, maybe 50 grand. Not the million we thought, but spendable. 50 grand. Sparky looked like he was going to cry. "Split 4 ways. That's nothing. I owe people more than that. We take what we can," Booker said pragmatically. He started loading the unmarked tens. 50 is better than 0. Silas stood in the middle of the vault, surrounded by millions of dollars of punched, worthless paper. He started to laugh. It was a manic sound. The irony. Silas cackled. "We break into the archive of history to steal the future, and we find money that is already dead. The system is mocking us, gentlemen. It's laughing at us." "Silas, we need to go," Cherry urged. "The sun is coming up." The getaway. They drove in silence. The mood in the van was poisonous. Sparky was shaking, mumbling to himself. Booker drove with a stone face. Cherry looked out the window. Silas sat in the passenger seat, staring at the side mirror. Someone talked. Silas said softly, The air in the van froze. "What?" Sparky squeaked. This vault was supposed to be the main reserve. The delivery schedule said fresh bills on Friday, but they moved the burn pile here instead. Someone tipped them off to switch the shipment. Or someone gave us bad intel. Silas turned his head. He looked at Sparky. Then he looked at Cherry. Then at Booker. "We have a rat," Silas said. "A little, scurrying rat. It wasn't me." Sparky yelled defensive immediately. "I didn't talk to nobody." "The guilty always scream first, Sparky," Silas said. "I didn't." Sparky was hyperventilating. "Maybe it was her. She went to get the cutters. She was gone for 5 minutes." Cherry turned slowly. Her eyes were dangerous. "Watch your mouth, junkie. I was getting the tools to get us in. You were too busy shaking to hold a wrench." "Enough," Booker rumbled from the driver's seat. "We're clear. We deal with it later." Silas lit a cigarette. He didn't say another word, but in his mind, he was already conducting a trial, and the verdict was death. Meanwhile, FBI Field Office, Street, Lewis. Agent Vance stood by a telex machine. A printout was chugging out. Subject: Bank heist, Mercantile Trust. Status: Suspects escaped. Loss: approx $50,000. Note: mutilated currency left behind. Vance ripped the paper off. He smiled. A thin, cruel smile. "They took the bait," Vance said to the agent next to him. "Not the big bait, but enough to keep them hungry. Enough to make them desperate." "Desperate men make mistakes, sir," the agent said. "Exactly," Vance nodded. "And desperate men turn on each other. The pressure cooker is on. Now we wait for the explosion." Vance walked to his desk. He opened a file. Inside was a black and white photo of the Velvet Gang taken from a distance, grainy, blurry. He took a red pen and circled Silas' face. "Tick, tock, preacher. Your sermon is almost over." End of Part 6. Part 7. Bloody Sunday, October 1964. Blackwater, Missouri. The house was a rotting Victorian corpse, sitting on a hill overlooking a dying town. The wallpaper peeled like sunburned skin, and the plumbing sang a mournful song of rust and lead. The Velvet Gang had been hiding here for 3 weeks. They were eating beans out of cans and watching dust motes dance in the shafts of autumn sunlight. Boredom wasn't just a feeling, it was a physical weight, pressing down on their chests. Silas sat in a rocking chair on the porch, reading a week-old newspaper. He was reading the horoscope section. "Libra," he read aloud to no one. "A sudden financial opportunity will present itself. Avoid conflict with authority figures." He laughed dryly. Too late for that. Inside, Cherry was playing solitaire. She slapped the cards down with aggressive precision. Snap, snap, snap. "Where's the kid?" Booker asked. He was in the kitchen, boiling water for coffee that tasted like mud. Cherry didn't look up. Said he went for a walk. Needed cigarettes. Silas stopped rocking. He folded the newspaper slowly. "He went to town?" Silas asked, his voice low. "He said he'd be quick." Cherry shrugged. "Relax, Silas. It's Sunday. The town is asleep. He's just getting smokes." Silas stood up. He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his coat. And for the first time in a long time, he grabbed the .45 automatic from the table and tucked it into his waistband. "Booker," Silas said. "Start the car." O'Malley's General Store, Main Street. The store smelled of pickles, sawdust, and ham. Old man O'Malley stood behind the counter, polishing an apple on his apron. Sparky was standing in aisle 3. He wasn't just buying cigarettes. He was holding a bottle of cheap rye whiskey in one hand and a half-eaten pepperoni stick in the other. He was swaying. "You got any of them? Them comics?" Sparky slurred, waving the pepperoni like a conductor's baton. "The ones with the space babes?" "This is a Christian establishment, son," O'Malley frowned. "We don't sell smut." Sparky giggled. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Christian, yeah. Everybody's a Christian until the vault opens. Then everybody's a pagan." The bell above the door jingled. Sheriff Dale Big Dale Cooper walked in. He was a man composed entirely of biscuits and gravy, with a badge that looked like it was struggling to stay pinned to his massive chest. He wore a cowboy hat and carried a nightstick that had seen better days. "Afternoon, Mr. O'Malley." The sheriff nodded. Sheriff O'Malley nodded back, looking relieved. "This fella here is causing a bit of a disturbance." Sparky froze. He turned around slowly. His eyes were wide, glassy pinpricks. The whiskey bottle slipped from his fingers. Smash! The glass shattered on the wooden floor. The smell of cheap rye filled the air instantly. "Whoops," Sparky whispered. The sheriff hitched up his belt. He walked over to Sparky, his boots thudding heavily. "Son, you look like you're having a bad day," the sheriff said, not unkindly. "You got ID?" Sparky patted his pockets frantically. I left it in my other pants. The space pants." The sheriff squinted. He looked at Sparky's leather jacket. He looked at the trembling hands. "You aren't from around here," the sheriff stated. "We don't have junkies in Blackwater. Turn around and put your hands on the shelf." "No, wait. I can pay for the floor." Sparky reached into his jacket. "Hands!" the sheriff barked, reaching for his holstered revolver. The door chime jingled again. Silas Wayne walked in. He wore his Sunday best suit. He smiled, a warm, disarming smile that showed all his teeth. "Is there a problem, officer?" Silas asked, his voice smooth as honey. The sheriff turned his head slightly, keeping one eye on Sparky. "Who are you?" "I'm his older brother." Silas lied effortlessly, stepping closer. "Our mother passed away last week. The boy is grieving. He drinks to forget. He's high as a kite, mister," the sheriff grunted. "And he's coming with me to the drunk tank to sleep it off." "I don't think that's necessary," Silas said, stepping into the sheriff's personal space. "I'll pay for the damages. We'll leave town immediately." He reached into his pockets and pulled out a roll of cash. The sheriff looked at the cash. Then he looked at Silas' face. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He had seen a flyer, a blurry photo from the FBI. "Wait a minute," the sheriff whispered. "You're..." Time seemed to stop. The dust motes in the air froze. Sparky, sensing the shift, panicked. He pulled the snub -nose.38 from his waistband. "No, I'm not going back," Sparky screamed. "Drop it," the sheriff yelled, spinning around, drawing his gun. Bang. Sparky fired. He missed the sheriff by a mile, shattering a jar of pickled eggs on the counter. Vinegar and brine exploded everywhere. The sheriff didn't miss. He fired once. The bullet hit Sparky in the shoulder, spinning him around. Sparky fell into a rack of potato chips, screaming. The sheriff pumped his shotgun. No, he had a revolver. He cocked the hammer for a second shot, aiming at Sparky's head. Silas didn't think. He didn't monologue. He drew the .45. He jammed the barrel against the side of the sheriff's head, right below the cowboy hat. Boom. The sound was deafening in the small store. The sheriff didn't fall, he just ceased to be a person. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. A spray of red painting the display of chewing tobacco behind him. Silence returned, punctuated only by Sparky's whimpering and the drip 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 of pickle juice falling from the counter. Old man O'Malley stood behind the register, his mouth open, paralyzed with fear. Silas stood over the dead sheriff. His ears were ringing. He looked at the smoking gun in his hand. He looked at the blood on his polished shoes. "The rule?" Silas whispered, his voice trembling with rage. The rule was no killing. He looked at Sparky, who was clutching his bleeding shoulder. "You stupid, selfish, little bastard." Silas walked over to the counter. He looked at O'Malley. The old man raised his hands. "Please, I have grandkids." Silas stared at him. For a second, he considered it. A witness. A loose end. Then he holstered the gun. "Call the coroner," Silas said coldly. "Tell him the circus was in town." The escape. Silas dragged Sparky out of the store by his collar, leaving a trail of blood on the sidewalk. Booker pulled up in the Cadillac, tires screeching. They threw Sparky into the back seat. Cherry saw the blood. She saw Silas' face. What happened? She gasped. Sunday school is over, Silas said, slamming the door. Drive. Go. Booker stomped on the gas. The Cadillac roared, fishtailing down Main Street, past the church where people were just letting out from the service. They watched the blue car tear past, a blur of chrome and violence. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. Sparky was sobbing. I'm sorry, Silas. I'm sorry. Silas turned around in the front seat. He punched Sparky in the face. Hard. Sparky's head bounced off the window. Shut up, Silas hissed. You just upgraded us from bank robbers to cop killers. Do you know what that means? It means the FBI doesn't want to arrest us anymore. They want to execute us. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He wiped a speck of the sheriff's blood off his cuff. We need a doctor, Booker said, looking in the rearview mirror at Sparky, who was pale and bleeding heavily. No hospitals, Silas said. We go to the vet. The vet? Cherry asked. Old army buddy of mine. Lives in the swamps near Cairo, Illinois. He fixes dogs and horses. He can fix a rat. Silas lit a cigarette. He inhaled deeply, but the smoke didn't calm him. This is it, Silas said, staring at the endless road ahead. The end of the romance. No. Now it's just war. Fade out. Music swells. House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. End of Part 7. Part 8. Gentlemen with Badges, November 1964. Outside Gary, Indiana. The sky was the color of a bruised plum. The wind coming off Lake Michigan carried the scent of sulfur, burning coal, and winter. The Velvet Gang was parked in a desolate lot behind a shuttered drive-in theater. The screen, peeling and white, loomed over them like a blank tombstone. They were changing clothes in the freezing wind. Gone were the flashy suits and the mechanics' coveralls. Today, they wore grey, cheap, off-the-rack grey suits from a department store in Peoria. White shirts, thin black ties, sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. Silas Wayne adjusted his tie in the side mirror of a stolen black Lincoln Continental. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes had deepened into canyons. He hadn't slept in 3 days. I hate this, Silas muttered. I look like an IRS auditor. That's the point, Silas, Cherry said. She was applying red lipstick, using the reflection in the car window. Fear. Nobody runs from a robber anymore, they try to be heroes. But an auditor from the Treasury Department, that puts the fear of God into a banker. It threatens his pension. Sparky was sitting in the driver's seat of the Lincoln. His arm was in a sling, hidden under his jacket. He was sweating, his skin the color of old parchment. He popped a pill's painkillers stolen from the vet and washed them down with a swig of warm cola. I can't feel my fingers, Sparky giggled nervously. Is that normal? I feel like my hands are made of balloons. Just keep the car running, Sparky, Booker rumbled from the back seat. He was checking a Thompson submachine gun, wrapping it in a trench coat. And don't fall asleep. Silas walked around the car. He looked at Cherry. You're sure about this intel? Silas asked, searching her eyes. A payroll delivery on a Tuesday. It feels convenient. Cherry didn't blink. She snapped her compact shut. My contact is solid, Silas. The Steelworkers Union gets paid in cash tomorrow. The money's sitting in the vault tonight. 200 grand. Enough to get us to Mexico and buy a hacienda. And who is this contact? Does it matter? Cherry challenged him, her voice hard. We have $12 between us. We are eating cat food, Silas. We are cop killers. We don't have the luxury of vetting sources. We take the score, or we die in the snow. Silas held her gaze. He wanted to trust her. He needed to trust her. Fine. Silas nodded. He put on his sunglasses. Let's go be the government. The Iron and Steel Bank of Gary. 3:45 p.m. The bank was a fortress of grey stone, built to withstand riots and depressions. It sat in the shadow of the steel mills, the smokestacks belching fire into the darkening sky. The Lincoln pulled up to the curb. Silas, Booker, and Cherry got out. They moved with a stiff, bureaucratic arrogance. They walked up the steps, briefcases in hand. Inside, the bank was quiet. A few steel workers in dirty overalls were cashing checks. The tellers looked tired. Silas walked straight to the security guard, an old man reading a comic book. Silas flashed a leather wallet. A gold badge caught the light. It was a fake, bought from a magic shop in Chicago. But at a glance, it looked official enough. Special Agent Miller, U.S. Treasury, Silas barked. We are here for an emergency audit of the Federal Reserve deposits. Secure the doors. The guard blinked, confused. Audit? I didn't hear nothing about an audit. That's because it's a surprise. Genius, Booker stepped in, his sheer size intimidating the old man. Lock the doors, now. Or do you want to explain to Washington why you compromised a federal investigation? The guard scrambled to the front door and flipped the lock. He turned the sign to closed. Silas turned to the lobby. Ladies and gentlemen, this bank is now under federal jurisdiction. Please remain calm. This is a procedural matter. Step away from the counters. The customers murmured but obeyed. The authority of the grey suits was absolute. Cherry, Silas commanded. Secure the lobby. Booker, with me to the manager's office. Cherry stood by the door, her hand inside her purse, gripping a pistol. She watched the customers. She looked at her watch. She looked nervous. The manager's office. Silas and Booker marched to the heavy oak door, labeled Mr. H. Fordyce, branch manager. Silas didn't knock. He kicked the door open. Mr. Fordyce, you are under arrest for. Silas stopped. The room was dimly lit. The blinds were drawn. Behind the large mahogany desk, Mr. Fordyce was not sitting. He was tied to a chair in the corner, a piece of duct tape over his mouth, his eyes wide with terror. Sitting in the manager's high-backed leather chair was a man in a black suit. He was smoking a cigarette. He swiveled slowly to face them. It was Agent Cordell Vance. Vance smiled. It was a smile that promised only pain. Hello, Silas, Vance said softly. I've been waiting for you. Silas froze. His hand went to his gun, but he stopped. From the shadows of the office, two men stepped out. They held shotguns leveled at Silas and Booker. Don't, Vance warned. The lobby is full of my men. The customers, agents. The tellers, agents. You walked into a cage, little bird. Booker tensed, his muscles coiling to spring. Stand down, Booker. Silas whispered. It's over. Vance stood up. He walked around the desk. He looked at Silas with a mix of disgust and admiration. The Treasury audit, Vance mused. Clever. A bit quick, but effective. You almost pulled it off. How? Silas asked. How did you know? Vance took a drag of his cigarette and exhaled the smoke into Silas' face. You have a leaky ship, Captain. Someone on your crew realized that prison is better than the electric chair. Someone made a deal. Silas felt a cold knife twist in his gut. He thought of Sparky, the junkie. The kid. Silas hissed. I knew it. Vance laughed. The kid, no. The junkie is loyal to a fault. Stupid, but loyal. Vance looked past Silas, through the open office door, into the lobby. Silas turned. In the lobby, Cherry was standing by the front door. She wasn't pointing her gun at the customers. She was holstering it. An agent walked up to her and handed her a cigarette. She took it. She lit it. She didn't look at the office. She looked at the floor. Silas felt the world tilt on its axis. Cherry. Silas whispered. The betrayal hit him harder than a bullet. The woman who blew up cars for fun. The artist of destruction. She gave us the location, Vance said, sitting back on the edge of the desk. She gave us the time. She even suggested the disguises, so we'd know exactly what to look for. Vance motioned to his men. Cuff them. As the agents moved in, Silas looked at Booker. The giant was calm. Too calm. He was looking at the shotgun, held by the agent on the left. He was calculating the distance. Booker. No. Silas said. I don't do cages, Silas, Booker rumbled. Outside. The Lincoln Continental. Sparky woke up. He had nodded off for a second. The pain in his shoulder was a dull throb now, masked by the floating sensation of the morphine. He looked at the bank. The sign said closed. Taking a long time, Sparky mumbled. He saw movement in the rearview mirror. A black van turned the corner. Then another. Then a police cruiser, running silent, no lights. They were boxing in the street. Sparky's drug-addled brain tried to process the information. Cops. Lots of cops. No sirens. Ambush, Sparky realized. The word sobered him up instantly. He looked at the bank entrance. Nothing. He looked at the ignition. The car was running. Sparky had a choice. He could put it in drive, peel out, and disappear. He could be in Mexico in 3 days. He could survive. He looked at his shoulder. He remembered Silas punching him. He remembered the sheriff. Then he remembered the pie in the diner. He remembered the fire engine. He remembered that for the first time in his miserable life, he belonged somewhere. Oh hell, Sparky sighed. He reached under the seat and pulled out the flare gun cherry's emergency signal. He rolled down the window. He pointed the flare gun at the front door of the bank. Knock, knock, Sparky whispered. Thump whoosh. A blinding red phosphorus flare streaked across the street. It crashed through the plate glass window of the bank lobby, shattering the silence and the glass in a million glittering shards. Inside the bank, the sound of shattering glass was followed instantly by a blinding red light, and the hiss of burning phosphorus. The flare skidded across the marble floor, spinning like a firework from hell. What that Vance shouted. Distraction. 1 second of distraction. Booker moved. He didn't go for his gun. He grabbed the barrel of the shotgun pointed at him. He twisted it, snapping the agent's trigger finger, and used the weapon as a club to smash the agent in the jaw. Crunch. Silas dove behind the heavy oak desk, just as the second agent opened fire. Boom. The buckshot shredded the leather chair where Vance had been sitting a second ago. It's a trap. Open fire. Vance screamed, diving for cover. In the lobby, chaos erupted. The red smoke from the flare filled the room. Agents were coughing, drawing weapons. Silas popped up from behind the desk, his .45 in hand. He fired 2 shots not at the agents, but at the light fixture above. Sparks showered down. Booker. The wall. Silas screamed. Booker, holding the stolen shotgun, didn't argue. He turned to the side wall of the officer plaster wall that separated the manager's office from the alleyway. He racked the slide. Clack clack, boom, boom, boom. He blew a jagged hole in the drywall. He kicked the studs out with a boot the size of a cinder block. Go, go. Silas scrambled through the hole into the cold alleyway. Booker followed, squeezing his massive frame through the wreckage. Inside the bank, Vance stood up, his face red with rage. Kill them, Vance roared. Kill them all. End of Part 8. Part 9. Mexican Standoff, November 1964. The alley behind Iron and Steel Bank. The alley was a canyon of wet brick and rotting garbage. Snow began to fall, mixing with the soot and the lingering red smoke of the phosphorus flare. Crash. Silas and Booker tumbled out of the jagged hole in the wall, landing on a pile of frozen trash bags. They were covered in drywall dust, looking like ghosts. My car. Silas coughed, spitting out plaster. Where is the Lincoln? Squill. Roar. The black Lincoln Continental drifted around the corner of the alley, sideswiping a dumpster with a shower of sparks. The front bumper was hanging off. The windshield was cracked. Sparky was behind the wheel, driving with one hand, his eyes wide and manic. He slammed on the brakes. The heavy car sliding on the icy pavement and coming to a halt inches from Silas' legs. Taxi service. Sparky screamed, his voice cracking. He was pale, sweating profusely from the pain in his shoulder, but the adrenaline had turned him into a vibrating wire. Get in. Move. Booker yelled, racking the slide of the stolen shotgun. Silas scrambled for the back door. Booker took the passenger side, but before they could close the doors, headlights blinded them. Two unmarked FBI sedans screeched into the other end of the alley, blocking the exit. Doors flew open. Agents spilled out, using the doors as shields. Shotguns, Tommy guns, revolvers. Cut the engine. A voice boomed from a megaphone. Silas looked behind them. The way they came was a dead end. They were trapped. The standoff. Agent Vance stepped out from behind the lead sedan. He didn't have a gun drawn. He held a cigarette in one hand and the megaphone in the other. Beside him stood Cherry. She looked small in the grey light. She was hugging her arms, shivering. She wasn't wearing a coat. She looked at the Lincoln, then at the ground. Silas stepped out of the car. He stood exposed in the middle of the alley. "Silas, get back in," Booker hissed, leveling the shotgun over the car door. "No," Silas said calmly. He straightened his tie. He brushed the dust off his suit. He walked 5 paces toward the police line. "It's over, preacher," Vance shouted, his voice amplified and metallic. "There is no Red Sea to part this time. Put the weapons down." Silas ignored Vance. He looked straight at Cherry. "Why?" Silas asked. He didn't shout, but in the acoustic tunnel of the alley, his voice carried. Cherry looked up. Her mascara was running. "I want to go home, Silas. I want a house. I want a dog. I don't want to die in a motel room smelling of bleach." "So you sold us," Silas said, "for a picket fence." "I made a deal." Cherry stepped forward, her voice rising, hysterical. "Immunity. They promised me immunity. Tell him, Vance." Vance looked at Cherry with the same expression one might have for a cockroach on a dinner plate. "I promised you consideration, Miss Valance," Vance corrected smoothly. "But you are currently standing in a field of fire. I suggest you move." "No," Cherry screamed, turning on Vance. "You said nobody dies. You said you just arrest them. Plans change." Vance dropped the megaphone. It clattered on the asphalt. "Kill them." The action. Time slowed down. It became a thick syrup. Silas saw the agent's fingers tighten on their triggers. He saw Booker diving across the hood of the Lincoln. He saw Sparky fumbling with the gear shift. And he saw Cherry. She realized, in that fraction of a second, that she was not a partner. She was a loose end. "Wait!" Cherry shrieked, stepping directly in front of Vance, waving her hands. "Don't shoot." A nervous young agent on the far right, a rookie whose hands were shaking, saw the sudden movement. He flinched. His finger slipped. Bang. The shot was deafening. The bullet didn't hit Silas. It didn't hit Vance. It hit Cherry. It caught her in the neck. A spray of bright arterial crimson painted the front of Vance's pristine black suit. Cherry's eyes went wide. She grabbed her throat, making a wet, gurgling sound. She turned to look at Silas, a look of utter confusion on her face, and collapsed into the slush. The traitor didn't die by the hero's hand. She died because a rookie cop had sweaty palms. The irony hung in the air for exactly 1 second. Then, hell broke loose. The shootout. "No!" Vance roared, wiping blood from his face. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. The agents opened fire. The windshield of the Lincoln disintegrated. Silas dove behind the engine block of the car, just as the air filled with lead. "Booker! Now!" Silas screamed. Booker rose up like a titan. He didn't aim. He just pointed the shotgun and fired. Boom. The windshield of the lead FBI sedan exploded. Agents ducked. "Sparky! Get us out of here!" Sparky was screaming. He was curled into a ball under the steering wheel, glass raining down on him. "I can't." They blocked the road. "Reverse," Silas yelled, firing his .45 blindly over the hood. "Go through the fence." Sparky looked in the rearview mirror. Behind them was a chain-link fence and a steep drop-off into a drainage ditch. "We'll die," Sparky sobbed. "We're already dead." Silas roared. "Drive." Sparky slammed the car into reverse. He floored the gas pedal. The massive V8 engine of the Lincoln roared like a wounded beast. The tire spun on the ice, smoking, then caught traction. Screech. The car shot backward. Vance fired his revolver, the bullets pinging off the heavy steel bumper. The Lincoln hit the chain-link fence doing 40 miles an hour. Crunch scree. The metal tore. The post snapped. The car flew backward, airborne for a terrifying moment, sailing over the edge of the embankment. Inside the car, gravity vanished. Silas saw the gray sky. Booker saw the roof of the car. Sparky saw Jesus. Crash. The car slammed into the bottom of the drainage ditch. The suspension snapped. The frame groaned. Mud and dirty water splashed over the shattered windows. The aftermath. Silence returned to the alley. Vance walked to the edge of the embankment. He looked down. The Lincoln was a wreck, half submerged in the freezing sludge of the ditch. Smoke poured from the hood. "Sir." An agent approached Vance. "Do we pursue?" Vance looked at his suit. It was ruined, stained with the blood of the woman who had helped him. He looked at Cherry's body, lying in the alley snow. It looked like a pile of discarded laundry. "No," Vance said coldly. "They have nowhere to go. The car is dead. One is wounded. They are on foot in the industrial district in November." He lit a fresh cigarette, his hands shaking slightly with rage. "Seal the perimeter. Bring in the dogs. I want them found before the sun goes down." Vance looked down at the wreck again. "And if they resist, aim for the head." In the ditch. Groans. Silas kicked open the bent door of the Lincoln. He crawled out into the freezing mud. His suit was torn. His face was cut. "Booker, here." Booker crawled out of the passenger side. He was limping. A bullet had grazed his thigh. "Sparky." They looked in the front seat. Sparky was slumped over the wheel. He wasn't moving. "Sparky." Silas reached in and shook him. Sparky groaned. He lifted his head. Blood was running down his forehead from the crash, mixing with the tears. "Did we win?" Sparky whispered dizzily. Silas looked up at the lip of the alley, where flashlights were already sweeping the darkness. He looked at Booker, bleeding and holding the empty shotgun. He looked at the dead end of the ditch. "No, Sparky," Silas said, helping the kid out of the car. "We didn't win." He supported Sparky's weight. Booker took the other side. "But we aren't done dancing yet." They began to limp down the drainage tunnel, disappearing into the darkness of the underground, leaving a trail of blood, oil, and broken dreams in the mud. End of Part 9. Part 10. The Last Dance Dawn. November 1964. An abandoned farmhouse. The kitchen wallpaper was peeling, revealing layers of floral patterns that dated back to the Depression. A single light bulb hung from a wire, swaying gently in the draft from the broken window. The Velvet Gang sat around a rotting wooden table. It was a distorted mirror image of the diner booth from Part 1. Instead of lemon meringue pie, there was a single can of cling peaches in heavy syrup, opened with a rusty pocket knife. Instead of coffee, there was a bottle of rubbing alcohol that Booker was using to clean the hole in his leg. Silas Wayne sat at the head of the table. His suit was shredded. His face was a map of bruises. He used a dirty fork to spear a peach slice. He held it up to the light. "Processed," Silas whispered. "Preserved in sugar. That's all we are now. Just expiration dates waiting to happen." Sparky lay on the floor, curled up on a moth-eaten rug. He was shivering violently. The withdrawal was hitting him harder than the car crash. Is the pie ready yet?" Sparky mumbled, his eyes squeezed shut. "I don't want the crust to be soggy." Booker grunted. He poured the rubbing alcohol directly into his wound. He didn't scream. He just gripped the edge of the table until the wood splintered under his fingers. "We have 3 shells left for the shotgun," Booker said, his voice gravelly and calm. "And your 45 is empty." Silas ate the peach. He chewed slowly. 3 shells, Silas nodded. 1 for the Father, 1 for the Son, and 1 for the Holy Ghost. Outside, the farmhouse was surrounded. It wasn't a cordon, it was a siege. 50 FBI agents, state troopers, and local deputies formed a semicircle around the porch. Snipers were positioned on the hoods of cars, A police helicopter, a rare sight, in 1964 chopped the air overhead, its spotlight cutting through the morning mist. Agent Cordell Vance stood by his car, holding a bullhorn. He looked immaculate again. He had changed his suit. He looked like an undertaker who enjoyed his work. He raised the bullhorn. Silas Wayne, Booker T. Washington, Arthur Sparky Jenkins. The names echoed across the frost-covered cornfields. There is no way out. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands on your heads, and you will live to see a judge. Vance lowered the bullhorn. He lit a cigarette. Sir, a deputy asked nervously, do we gas them? Vance shook his head. No. Gas is for rats. These are wolves. You don't gas a wolf. You put it down. Inside. Silas stood up. He walked to the window and peeked through a crack in the curtains. He knows my middle name. Sparky giggled from the floor. I never told nobody my middle name. Silas looked at the army outside. He looked at the sniper rifles. He looked at the machine guns. He turned back to Booker. Do you think a judge will listen to us, Booker? Do you think he'll understand the nuance of our performance art? Booker loaded the 3 shells into the shotgun. Click-clack. I think a judge will hang us before lunch, Booker said. Silas smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had worn in months. It was free of irony. I agree. Silas walked over to a dusty corner of the living room. There, sitting on a crate, was an old phonograph. A record was already on the platter. Silas cranked the handle. He placed the needle on the vinyl. Scritch-scratch. The drums kicked in, fast, tribal, melodic. A weller. Everybody's heard about the bird. B bird, B-bird's a word. The trashman's surfing bird exploded into the room. It was loud, obnoxious, and completely insane. Sparky opened his eyes. He dragged himself up. He used the table to pull himself to his feet. He was swaying, bleeding, and trembling, but the rhythm caught him. The bird. Sparky whispered. The bird is the word. Silas walked to the front door. He buttoned his torn jacket. He slicked back his hair with bloody fingers. Gentlemen, Silas shouted over the chaotic music. The audience is waiting. It would be rude to keep them in the cold. Booker stood up. He racked the shotgun. He looked at Silas. It was a hell of a show. Silas. The best, Booker. The absolute best. Silas grabbed a rusted crowbar from the floor. It was the only weapon he had left. Sparky. Silas yelled. You ready to fly? Sparky grinned. His teeth were red with blood. His eyes were wide and wild. Pop-oo-mo-mo. Sparky screamed. The finale. Vance heard the music coming from the house. He frowned. What in God's name is that noise? Then, the front door of the farmhouse was kicked off its hinges. Crash. Silas Wayne stepped onto the porch. He didn't have his hands up. He was holding a crowbar, like a conductor's baton. Good morning, America. Silas screamed, his voice cracking with manic joy. Behind him, Booker emerged, a mountain of defiance. And Sparky. Sparky ran. He didn't run away. He ran forward. He leaped off the porch, flailing his arms, screaming the lyrics to the song. A weller, don't you know about the bird? Everybody knows that the bird is the word. Fire. Vance commanded. The world turned into noise and light. Slow motion. Silas swinging the crowbar at the empty air, laughing. Booker firing a shotgun. Boom. A police windshield shattering. Sparky dancing through the hail of bullets, his body jerking not from impact, but from the sheer electric madness of the moment. Splinters of wood flew from the porch railing. Glass exploded. Feathers from a pillow inside the house drifted out the door, floating in the air like snow. Silas looked directly at Vance. Their eyes met across the chaos. Vance didn't smile. He just watched. Silas mouthed one word. Freedom. Then, a bullet caught Silas in the chest. A puff of dust rose from his jacket. He didn't fall. Not yet. He kept moving forward. The music swelled to a deafening crescendo. Pop-oo-mo-mo. Pop-oo-mo-mo. The screen turns bright red. Then black. The music cuts out instantly. Title card. The end.